Seven, and the carry goes down the field, and it's caught and breathed in for the touchdown.
Two things in life that suck: death, taxes, 85 will always go.
Welcome to New Stripe City, a podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, and today is episode 23, entitled Owen Seven. And on today's episode of New Stripe City, I'm going to talk a lot about the Browns game, our upcoming schedule, and what we can do to turn our season around. But first, I would like to get into some announcements. So as you guys know, had some technical issues. They have been resolved. We have a new host. So right now, things are going as they should. If I'm not mistaken, the podcast should be available tomorrow. Everything should be updated. You should be able to find us in the iTunes store as well as other places. This will be under the name New Stripe City, so make sure you check us out. Now, the logo did change. I switched it actually to the AJ Green logo that we have, so be sure to check that out. I just wanted to see what that would look like for a while, but I may go back to the old or the original because I really like that, but I just wanted to test this out real quick. But as far as our technical issues, those should be, knock on wood, done here. So we're just going to, for now, cruise just to see how things go a little bit. So I'll release our episodes twice this week. I'm not going to commit to any post dates just because we're just in the trial period of seeing how this new host works, making sure everything runs technically sound. So if that holds up, then we'll get back to our regular schedule of Tuesdays and Saturdays for this podcast. So stay tuned for that. I'll definitely make an announcement. Other than that, we've got some other ways that we will be providing this content to you. Our podcast now is located on podcastgarden.com/New Stripe City. So you can check us out there. If you aren't able to pick it up in the iTunes store, you have a backup link there. We'll also post a link on YouTube as well, so you can always check that. If you don't have the video or audio available for the podcast, check there. But other than that, we have some things cooking. I know it's been a while, but I have some guests that I want to get on here, and we'll definitely have some feedback between me and the fans, and we'll definitely get back into the segments. It was really tough, man, because I really enjoyed doing my show. I really enjoyed interacting with you guys, and I really want us to make it up to you. So definitely, if you have any suggestions for the show, leave them in the comments or send me an email. I know a couple of you guys have reached out to me already, and I appreciate that. So we're definitely committed back to delivering you guys one of the best Bengal shows that is out there, and I appreciate your support. I see that you guys love my insight, and I'm just privileged to have a fan base as loyal as you guys that have stuck with me and just love the show. So definitely stay tuned on that. So I have some surprises for you guys. I know you guys have been waiting, but like I said, I have some things to win you guys back over, and definitely look forward to some collaborations definitely in the future. So with that being said, we got that win. It feels good, right? Feels good to be back in the winner circle. So as we know, we defeated the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. Definitely was a huge vote of confidence for our offense. AJ Green had a monster catch. It's unridiculous what this guy can do with the ball in his hands, or in his hand, or hands, however you want to say it. But the guy's focus is just on a whole nother level. But just looking into the game, Jeremy Hill also had a great game as well. The run game was able to get going. I believe he ran for over 160 yards on 9 carries. It's ridiculous. I don't even want to know what that average was with his yards per carry. Basically, I heard a guy made a joke that if he would have had about 30 carries, he would have ran for like 500 yards, and that's just ridiculous and mind-blowing. But it was good to see Hill going. It seemed like the past 2 weeks with Hill, he was kind of battling some injuries, so it was hard for him to get going. Giovanni Bernard also had a decent game as well. Brandon LaFell has come into his own. I mean, I'd have to give it to him. I know on some of the previous episodes I was a little bit upset with the lack of the Bengals finding a replacement for Marvin Jones, but I think that Brandon LaFell is really starting to fill that role pretty well. He's very consistent. His hands have been there. He's had some drops here and there, but not as many as not the drops that kind of have plagued him in the past, with New England. So Brandon LaFell is definitely proven his worth. And it's funny because for the guys who do listen, and I mean, I don't take credit for any of this stuff because I'm not a member of the organization, but one thing that I did do, and some of you guys that follow me on Twitter know this, when the Bengals were in the hunt for a receiver and Brandon LaFell was on the market, I cross-referenced his numbers in Prime as far as, some of the metrics that I go by there. And Brandon LaFell was just like the prototypical guy that the Bengals look for. And so what I did was I actually sent a message to Brandon LaFell's agent saying that, have you just wanting to have some additional mileage just as a super fan, just wanting to see if, any contract negotiations had been started or if either side had reached out to one another. And it's just crazy that weeks after that there's like an interest and there's reports that the Bengals met with LaFell. So I hope that played a factor, but I mean, who knows? Who knows? I mean, the Bengals knew that they needed a need, and he was a guy that typically fit the mold that they look for, so I wasn't surprised either way. But it'd be kind of cool to know if that had played any kind of factor. So hopefully if I can possibly get an interview with one of these guys or with somebody within the organization, maybe I can find that out. But long story short, Brandon LaFell is doing his thing. Tyler Boyd's coming along. He's still kind of learning his role and trying to progress a little bit, so that's good to see. It was great to see Tyler Eifert. I mean, the podcast is back. And this podcast, I almost kind of want to compare it to Tyler Eifert's injury because it's like week 3, week 4, we thought Eifert was a go, just like I thought the podcast was a go, and then there's a re-aggravation of an injury or a new injury, and things just come up. So it's a funny analogy that I like to use, but it was great to see Tyler Eifert from a Bengals fan standpoint, and from a fantasy standpoint. Like, I mean, aside from his game this past weekend, because it really wasn't that good, but he was playing on the snap count. But in my fantasy league, guys, I don't know how many of you guys are fantasy players, but I have Tyler Eifert in my fantasy league, and this guy was like killing me this entire season because I was just ready to go. I picked him probably in like the 8th or 9th round. I thought that I had a steal. I was just ready. I was all in on Tyler Eifert. So he goes out there. He's getting ready to come back, like I said, in week 3 and week 4, and then he just never ended up like getting on the field. And in fantasy, everyone knows that a tight end is a very important position to have. So at the time I picked up Kyle Rudolph, who ended up being pretty good, right? Okay. So let me tell you guys about the part where I dropped Kyle Rudolph because I thought Eifert was coming back, right? And no, Eifert didn't come back, right? Okay. So then Kyle Rudolph is now like a tight end stud. So after that, I looked at a couple of other guys. I looked at Hunter Henry. Okay, so I picked up Hunter Henry. This guy might be pretty decent, but, I'm good. Eifert's going to be back. Reports come out. Eifert practice. Okay, looks like he's going to go. He doesn't go. I think this was like the Miami week. I think it was week 4. He doesn't play. I'm like, oh, okay, so I dropped Hunter Henry. Just dropped another guy. Okay, so I was just so glad for him to actually be active as a fan and as a fantasy player, because in fantasy it was important, but I mean, just my frustrations with this offense in general seemed that the way that we struggled in the red zone was due to Eifert not being there. So it was kind of funny to see him back, but he still didn't play a huge role due to his limited snaps. But it was still good to see the offense do their thing out there. And it's crazy because the Bengals are actually the number one passing offense, which I don't know if that's a little bit of inflated numbers. I think they're the number one offense in the AFC, excuse me. So that was kind of interesting for me to see because our offense outside of Andy Dalton has really kind of struggled, especially on the offensive line. Cedric is just not looking very good. In my opinion, I really don't understand why Winston doesn't start and why Jake Fisher doesn't get snaps. It's kind of mind-boggling. But there's going to be growing pains with him. But when you're at the position that we are, where you're trying to get back into this race for the AFC North, I don't think that's the right time. But I'm not a coach, so I can't say which personnel should be playing. But in my opinion, it's kind of a head scratcher. Looking back at the game earlier, I kind of rewatched and broke down the game. He kind of whiffed on a couple of plays, one in which Andy was sacked. So hopefully he gets that stuff cleaned up, man, and hopefully we'll start to see Winston in there more. I believe on some occasions Winston actually replaced him in there. So something to look at. But other than that, man, it was overall it was just a great game. On the defensive side of the ball, defensive line really got after it. Carlos Dunlap's having a great year. He's been very consistent. Geno Atkins, the typical guys, basically showed up. But we also saw guys like Marcus Hunt and Will Clark make plays. So another guy that's kind of been playing very good on the radar this year is Pat Sims. He's also made quite a bit of plays this year. Then we also saw some plays in the secondary. And right when I wanted to finally jump back on the Sean Williams train, he gets an interception and fumbles it and gives it right back to the Cleveland Browns offense. So I would probably say that those are some of the positives. Some of the negatives I would say is Mike Nugent. I don't know if it's just a Mike Nugent thing or an NFL kicker thing in general. It's like you have to miss field goals or chip shots. And with Mike Nugent, he missed 2 of them yesterday. Just as a realist, I know that the Bengals aren't going to cut him, but in my opinion, that's definitely something that can come back to bite us. Just like I've stated in the past with some of the other games. I'm not a complete Nugent hater, and it's not even really because it's Mike Nugent. If you were to get anybody in here, even Stephen Gostkowski over there in New England, if you're missing field goals, it's just unacceptable. Extra points is unacceptable. We look at the Seahawks and Arizona game, how painful that was last night because guys just can't make field goals. So, maybe it's more of a field goal kicker thing. You even look at the guy Arroyo from Tampa Bay that was drafted in the second round. He can't make a field goal to save his life either. So, maybe I'll back off of Mike Nugent a little bit, but we still need more consistency there. You have to be consistent in all 3 phases of the game, and he's just not provided that for us at the time. Other than that, I look at the performance from Zampezi. I really like some of the play calling in this game. I really liked how balanced the offense was. And to me, the MVP of the season, through all of the struggles, through all of the ups and downs, has been Andy Dalton. This guy is playing efficient at the quarterback position. Like, he's not turning the ball over. He's throwing for a ton of yards. The only thing he's missing is touchdowns. But in my opinion, that's because of the lack of Eifert's presence in the red zone. So I think once we get Eif back in there, we'll be good to go. But Andy he's really having a great year. I think that the early season struggles have kind of overshadowed his performance in terms of consideration for the MVP. With us being 3-4, it's kind of hard for them to consider a team like that. But he's really just picked up where he left off last year with playing at an elite level. Just to be honest with you, man, when you look around this division, because I'm also in a AFC North War Room group on Facebook, and I hear guys that are Ravens fans say that, Joe Flacco is better than Andy Dalton, all because he has a Super Bowl. Okay, I give kudos to any quarterback that wins a Super Bowl, but let's just be real. It's almost irrelevant when you have a guy like Trent Dilfer. Now, unless you have a guy that's won 4 or 5 Super Bowls, 2 or 3, okay, I'll give you your kudos. And I'm not taking anything away from Joe Flacco. He played great that year. When he got hot in the playoffs, he was the reason. He was one of the reasons. I'm not gonna say he was the reason, but he was one of the reasons that the Ravens made it there. But let's not act like Ed Reed wasn't there. Let's not act like Ray Lewis wasn't there. Those are Baltimore Raven legends, and those were elite players, no matter how you slice it. Let's not act like Anquan Boldin wasn't there. That's why once they won the Super Bowl and they decided to put the entire team on Joe Flacco's shoulders, they've fallen short. I'm not surprised there. But ever since Andy Dalton has gotten into this league, he has, if I'm not mistaken, majority of the years he's been in the league, he's put up better numbers than Joe Flacco. He's had a better quarterback rating than Joe Flacco. And we saw what Joe Flacco did yesterday, which was great for us as Bengals fans because he was completely garbage against the New York Jets. But to me, he's not a better quarterback than Andy Dalton. And I have no problem with saying that. I mean, if there's another guy in the division that really gives Andy a run for his money, the only other guy is Big Ben. And Big Ben, even though he is a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, he has a tendency to turn the ball over. He can make mistakes. He can be rattled. So, in my opinion, Andy Dalton is definitely coming for the throne of the best quarterback within the AFC North. And there's no arguing it. I mean, numbers don't lie. Look at the guy playing. And it was cool to definitely brush up against Hugh Jackson this past weekend. I kind of read some articles that touched on his relationship and his role in Andy Dalton's progression, but it's also good to see love from that side, but also it's cool to see Zampese evolve. I think that this was a big test for him in the sense that with us matching up against Hugh Jackson, the natural thought process is for people to kind of compare what Hugh did with our offense last year and where our offense is this year. And I think that he kind of answered the bell in that regard. So it was definitely good to see that. Looking ahead and looking around the division, I mean, Pittsburgh lost. I believe they only have a one-game lead in the division after losing to the New England Patriots. And then the Ravens are at 3-4, which I kind of knew that they would be there. They were kind of an inflated team for the longest. So things in the AFC North are really opening up, especially with Pittsburgh and Baltimore duking it out this week. I kind of am low-key voting for the Ravens just because... And it's hard to pick between the two, but honestly, I hate the Steelers more than the Ravens, and I have no qualms about that. But I'd like to see Pittsburgh take that loss so they can also be 0-1 in the division. And I have a feeling that we can handle the Ravens. I feel like we might be able to sweep them again. I'm not gonna put it out there yet, but that's what my feeling is on that. And I also feel like we can split with Pittsburgh. So. To me, I feel like it's crucial for Baltimore to go ahead and get this win. And then if we can get our win next week against Washington, then we'll both be tied. There'll be like a three-way tie, I believe, for the AFC North. So I don't know what that tiebreaker is going to come down to, but that'll definitely put things back in our favor, especially with Big Ben being out for a period of time. Apparently, it's rumored that he might be back week 9. I don't really believe it. I could see him doing that because he usually plays through injuries, but realistically, I don't think that's gonna work. And even if he does come back, it could be like a situation last year where he came back and clearly wasn't himself. So the AFC North is definitely up for grabs. So that's good to see. We're looking at Washington coming in, man, and Washington just looking ahead at that game. They're kind of a mixed bag. You don't really know what you're going to get with them. Just looking at their offense, I would probably say you never know what you're really going to get at running back. Matt Jones had a horrible game last weekend. He fumbled. I could see them potentially spelling him a lot with Chris Thompson, who's usually the third down back anyway. But Robert Kelly could be another guy that they could look to get involved. Some of the headlines that I read said that Jay Gruden is definitely looking his way after Matt Jones had his recent struggles. So that's something to keep an eye on. Deshaun Jackson, I can't quite put my finger on what's wrong with him. I don't know if he's hurt. But it's Deshaun Jackson. You're always going to have to keep your eyes on him to see what he can do. We also have Pierre Garçon. But to me, the guy to keep your eye on in Washington, the most dangerous guy in that offense is definitely Jamison Crowder. Definitely we definitely have to key in on him and make sure that he isn't a guy that can get loose because the guy can do it all. He's a slot receiver. He can return kicks, punts, but he lines up really good out of the slot. He really kind of reminds me of Andrew Hawkins, and a good friend of mine that was on the show as well, Moody, was a big proponent of this guy when he came out of Duke. He actually wanted the Bengals to pick him up, but he's just a guy that can find a crease and make a move and make a play, and the next thing you know, he's burning you for a touchdown. So definitely a guy that we have to look out for. On the defensive side of things, we're seeing A.J. Green line up against Josh Norman. I've heard a lot of talk around the NFL from outside fans that give A.J. Green his respect to a point, but try to say that he can't get it done against quality corners. I'm really looking forward to this matchup because I think that he can exploit and expose Josh Norman. He's a great corner, but in my opinion, I think that Josh Norman is a system corner. So we'll see. I mean, he's still a pretty good talent, but this will be a great test for AJ and our offense. I also think that this will be a game where Eifert can kind of showcase some of his skills as well. Other than that, on the defensive side of things, I believe they lost D'Angelo Hall for the season. There's some other guys in that secondary that might be able to do some things, but it's going to be interesting seeing how we match up against these guys in London. I know that they're trying to stay in contention for the NFC East, and we're trying to stay in contention for the AFC North. So I think that this is going to be a game that is going to be very important. It's one of those games that we have to go in and win. And I think if we can get down there and take care of business, we should be fine. I kind of see this game going, if I wanted to give a game prediction on it, I'd probably say Jay Gruden likes to score a lot of points, so I'll probably say 27-20 Bengals. Hopefully we can get out and get started early, and we can stay consistent. I mean, that's one of the negatives that I will say that kind of came from the Browns game is there were some inconsistencies in some facets of the game, but hopefully those things will be kept to a minimum going forward. So this is another former coach from the Bengals staff that we're taking on in Jay Gruden. So it's definitely going to be very important that we kind of stop the pass. We kind of know how Jay Gruden is. I mean, he was our first offensive coordinator here, so he's a guy that tends to kind of favor the pass. He can really get away from the run, so our pass defense has to definitely be stout and make sure that we key on some of those players that I spoke on. This could also be a game. I can't believe I forgot about this guy because he's a huge part of their offense. Is tight end Jordan Reed. He's been out with a couple of games. He's been out for a couple of games with a concussion, so he's definitely another guy to keep your eye on. But in his absence, Vernon Davis has actually played pretty solid. So make sure we keep an eye on that. It'll be interesting to see if he's going to actually make this game for London. I believe he is. The last report, I believe, said that Jordan Reed was cleared to return to practice, so he should be a threat, which kind of scares me because tight end has always, I mean, for the longest time, it only seemed like, I believe last year, we kind of got it under wraps, but for the longest, the tight end has been like the Achilles heel for the Bengals defense. So hopefully we can keep him in check with Burfict and Carlos Dansby. So hopefully we'll get some things done there. But yeah, like I said, I think Bengals take it 27-20. And with that being said, I just want to say thanks for supporting the show, guys. I'll definitely be back this week with my second show. Like I said, stay tuned on that. Make sure you check out the podcast. We're back in effect for now. So, like I said, we're going to test this thing out, make sure that it works, and then we'll be hitting you guys with a lot of collaborations. In the future, I have some guests that I've been talking to. I'm not going to put their names out now until I have some things confirmed. But stay tuned, man. We got some pretty good guests lined up for you guys. So, as usual, Who Day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday.